first time I saw the woman in the photograph, I stopped breathing. Because she looked exactly like my mother. Same eyes, same smile, same tiny scar near her chin. But the woman in the picture was standing beside the family everyone in my town hated, the Delmonts, the family that destroyed my father's life. And according to everyone I knew, my mother had never even met them growing up. My father only had 2 rules: never ask about the Delmont family, and never go near their estate. He never explained why. But every time their name appeared on TV, his entire expression changed. Like he was remembering something painful, something dangerous. We lived in a tiny apartment on the edge of the city while the Delmonts owned almost everything around us. Hotels, banks, luxury apartments, private schools. Even the hospital my father died in had their name on it. People called them royalty. But in our house, they were spoken about like ghosts. My father used to work for them years ago. That was all my mother ever admitted. Nothing more. Whenever I asked questions, she'd immediately shut down the conversation. And after my father died, she became even quieter, almost nervous all the time. Especially whenever a black luxury car drove through our neighborhood. At first, I thought she was just paranoid, until the day I found the photograph. It happened 3 weeks after my 18th birthday. My mother was working a late shift cleaning offices downtown, and I was searching for an old sweater in the storage closet. That's when I found the box, hidden beneath winter blankets, locked. I don't know why, but something about it immediately felt wrong, like I wasn't supposed to touch it. I tried opening it with the key from our kitchen drawer, and somehow it worked. Inside were dozens of photographs, newspaper clippings, letters, and stacks of money tied together with rubber bands. Worked hands started shaking. Because every single photograph included the Delmont family, luxury parties, private jets, mansions, and standing beside them in almost every picture was my mother. Not as a cleaner, not as an employee, she looked close to them, important. In one photo, she was standing beside Richard Delmont himself, the billionaire everyone in the country knew. And he had his arm around her shoulders, like they were family. I felt sick, because none of it made sense. My mother had spent my entire life pretending she barely knew these people. So why did these photos exist? Then I found the newspaper article, and everything changed. Financial scandal, DESTROYS local businessman. The article was 20 years old. There was a picture of my father being escorted out of a courthouse. I stared at it for almost a full minute. I had never seen my father look so broken. According to the article, he had been accused of stealing millions from the Delmont company. The scandal destroyed his reputation overnight. He lost everything. And weeks later, the Delmont Corporation bought his business for almost nothing. That business should have been ours. Instead, we grew up struggling to pay rent. I kept reading. Then I noticed something horrifying. One of the witnesses listed in the case was my mother. I couldn't breathe. I read her name again and again. No matter how many times I looked at it, it didn't change. My mother testified against my father. The same father who loved her until the day he died. The same man who worked himself sick trying to support us. I remember sitting there on the floor for what felt like hours, trying to convince myself there had to be some explanation. But deep down, I already knew my mother had lied to me my entire life, and somehow she was connected to the reason we lost everything that night. I pretended nothing happened. I waited for her to come home, and for the first time in my life, I studied her carefully. Every movement, every expression. She looked exhausted, older than I remembered. But when she smiled at me, it almost made me angry, because suddenly I didn't know who she really was. Finally, I asked her one question. Did you know Richard Delmont personally? The color disappeared from her face instantly. And right there, I knew the truth was worse than I imagined. She slowly sat down across from me, then whispered something I'll never forget. Silence filled the room. I could actually hear the clock ticking behind us. Then she said something even worse. I worked for them long before I met your father. I stared at her, waiting for more, but she just looked terrified, like saying the wrong thing could ruin everything. Finally, I pulled the newspaper article from my pocket and placed it on the table. The second she saw it, her eyes filled with tears. You testified against Dad. Her lips trembled. It wasn't supposed to happen like that. I felt anger rising in my chest. What does that even mean? She covered her face with her hands. Then finally she told me the truth. 20 years ago, my father and Richard Delmont were business partners, best friends. They built a company together from nothing. But when the business started making real money, Richard wanted complete control. My father refused. That's when everything changed. According to my mother, Richard began secretly moving money through fake accounts, then blamed everything on my father. But he needed someone credible to support the story, someone the court would trust, her. At the time, she was already working closely with the Delmont family. Richard promised her something unbelievable. If she testified, he would protect my father from prison. She thought she was saving him. Instead, Richard took everything, the company, the money, their future. And by the time she realized the truth, it was too late. I wanted to scream at her. Part of me hated her, but another part could see the guilt destroying her from the inside. For 20 years, she whispered, I've been trying to protect you from them. Then she looked directly at me, and for the first time that night she looked truly afraid. He knows about you. Stomach dropped. What? Richard Delmont knows you exist. The room suddenly felt cold. She explained that after my father died, Richard occasionally sent people to watch us, not to help, to monitor us, to make sure the truth never resurfaced. That was why she panicked whenever luxury cars appeared near our apartment. She wasn't paranoid. She was terrified. Then she told me something that changed everything again. There's proof. I froze. What proof? She stood slowly and walked back to the storage closet. From beneath the box of photographs, she pulled out a small silver flash drive. Your father gave me this before he died. Inside were financial records, private emails, transfers, everything linking Richard Delmont to the fraud. Enough to destroy one of the most powerful families in the country. I stared at the flash drive in disbelief. Why didn't you give this to the police? My mother's expression darkened. Because people connected to this case started disappearing. A chill ran down my spine, and suddenly this no longer felt like family drama. It felt dangerous, very dangerous. That night I barely slept. I kept thinking about my father, about everything we lost, about the life we should have had, and for the first time in years, I understood why my mother always looked afraid. But the worst part of me still didn't know if I could forgive her. Because even if she'd been manipulated, she still helped destroy us. The next morning, I woke up to loud knocking outside our apartment. 3 men in black suits stood near the entrance downstairs, and parked beside the curb was a black Delmont vehicle. My mother looked terrified. Then her phone rang, unknown number. She answered slowly. And the second she heard the voice, her face went completely pale. Before hanging up, she whispered only 4 words. He knows about the drive. In that moment, I realized our story was far from over.